Joining us now, of course, she was an All-American during her college days. Played at Stanford, and of course, this past year at South Carolina, and has been playing this summer with the Florida Vibe. Good friend of the show. Speak of Alana Vawter, joining us now here and in the circle on D1 softball. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be running it back all over again.
I know. Now, this is unique as we're recording this. She is in traveling. We're not going to talk about where she's traveling and all that, but so if you hear some background noise, she's in an airport, which you're not the first that we've interviewed on an airport, but point is you've been busy, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us.
Absolutely. It ended up working out perfect.
So let's talk first about your summer. Describe this summer. You've been playing with the Florida Vibe. What's it been like?
It's been awesome. The girls are everything and then some. The coaching staff's phenomenal, ownership great. Just to be in Florida, it's like a vacation destination, and I get to play my sport professionally here. It's been just a joy to be able to experience the professional softball circuit and to see, where the shortcomings are and what I can do to help kind of grow the game, grow the sport a little bit, and see kind of just what the future of softball can be.
I remember you and I talked, and we even ran into each other in Orlando when you were playing at South Carolina. And we talked even before when you arrived to South Carolina. You said I asked about your future. You said you go year by year. You weren't, you
Yeah.
wanted to see how it goes. Where are
Yeah.
you now as far as do you want to continue to play pro ball? I mean, based on this experience, what's kind of your outlook here moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the end of the day, softball is something I don't really see myself straying away from, whatever capacity that looks like, sticking around the sport. I think that was probably my answer last time we talked. It's
Yeah.
still relevant. Same idea as just kind of physically being able to understand like where my body's at. It's not going to be a forever thing to play, obviously. So that's kind of where the year by year comes into play. But this past year, thank goodness I was, healthy and able to continue on. And hopefully that, remains the case as this next year comes up. And obviously it becomes a little bit more difficult to not play college softball, but then to have to be in shape for a professional season. So to see how my body kind of reacts to that will be interesting. But definitely looking forward to another summer of pro ball.
You've been that'll be exciting. So it'll be good to see you keep playing. Of course, as you're wrapping up your playing season, it doesn't mean you're wrapping up softball season because I know from what I understand, you've got some important big camps coming up. You're going to be hosting in August back at home. There, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually August 2nd through 4th, Monica Abbott will be in Kansas City alongside myself and Carlin Pickens. We'll be joining her in her Monica Abbott Speed Retreat Camp. So have some of the best pitchers in the country coming by, learning all things technique as well as just speed, and just, location, tunneling, everything, all things pitching. So really excited to get to meet her in person. And I mean, it's going to be a great camp. Excited to learn from her as well and to be able to contribute a little bit to everyone that decides to come in and hang out with us.
Wow, Monica Abbott. Yeah, that's I love what you just threw in there. That's like, yeah, Monica Abbott's going to be out there. That's pretty good. So you first time you'll meet her and talk to her in person. Is that correct?
In person, yeah, in person, yeah. She actually called a couple of our games this past year,
Right.
when I was at South Carolina, but we never got to run in with the game day schedule and obviously broadcasting schedule. It all kind of is day by day. But so knew she was there and got to text her a little bit. But yeah, this will be my first time actually meeting her. And I think we got really big things in store.
What's one question you're looking forward to asking her?
I mean, when I tell you I'm just so excited to like learn, I consider myself a bit of a power pitcher, but I don't really, I just love to be able to pick other pitchers' brains on, and this past year and playing pro ball was so huge on that. And, we're talking to the dugout, how do you throw your change up? What do you grip this pitch like? And what are you thinking technique wise when you're releasing it and just stuff like that. So I'm just really excited to pick her brain on all things pitching and see what I can kind of gain from that and then be able to implement myself alongside being able to teach other people the same.
That's pretty awesome. I look forward to that. People should definitely keep note of that and follow you on social media for all the details on that. Right? Like that's gonna be pretty. I can't wait. I better see a photo. You better take a photo with her. That's my advice.
Uh, I'll take all the photos, I'll take all the videos, and we'll see how much we can teach everybody along the way.
What is the question that young people have asked you about as far as pitching? That's common. What's a popular question you get asked?
I think, well, a big one that I guess, super passionate about is just the like, how many pitches do you throw? I think that's something that people think is such a big deal. And then when they come to find out, like, I had two pitches throughout college, call it two and a half, if you will, trying to make that be a solid three in pro ball. But how successful you can be with a limited number of pitches, I think young girls don't really grasp that very fast. It's hard to think that I can have two really good pitches and be really successful when other pitchers are having five and six, and now I want to have five and six. Like, no, let's be good at two, instead of being average at five, and see kind of what type of pitcher I can be because of that. It's hard to grasp when you're younger, but as you kind of get a little bit older and understand what you're doing on every single pitch and how you're releasing it, how it feels, and all of those details, like I think it starts to be a lot more, just understanding yourself as a pitcher, but it's hard to kind of grasp in the younger years for sure.
Now let's talk about this past year. You played at South Carolina. You wanted to try
Mhm.
something to experience new things. How would you describe this past year at South Carolina?
I guess in one year, I would describe it in like one word of just kind of fun. Certainly different, but I really did appreciate kind of the scenery, the SEC country. Columbia, South Carolina was just a great city to be in. I really enjoyed the atmosphere, the fan base. The Gamecock culture was just something that was super special. The coaching staff was just amazing, and everything that they were able to pour into me. Obviously, only having one year, you get kind of like frustrated on, am I really going to be able to develop that much? What can I really contribute? But they did a great job, and just being super open and honest with me from the very beginning of what they expected from me and what I was going to get in turn from them. So definitely great relationships that I have with the entire coaching staff that I hope to continue on in life, and talking to them and just being able to kind of pick their brains as friends now, instead of kind of that coaching side of things. And the girls were great, and I think they really kind of embraced what softball is supposed to be, and the joy that you're supposed to have for the game, even when kind of the going gets tough. And obviously, the going gets tough in every college softball season. You'll see it in the scores, but to know the behind the scenes too, that was something that I really did, tried not to take for granted.
What's one or two experiences that you'll take with you from this past year? Playing in the SEC, as strong of a league as it gets. What's a couple of moments you're going to think have in your back pocket as in a memory bank?
Oh, that's a good one. I will say, just in general, the SEC tournament, was super cool to be a part of. And coming from the past year where I'd ended at the World Series with Stanford, and then having the SEC tournament, like people would say, it is kind of the mini World Series, the same kind of crew. It's kind of the ESPN's way, and ABC, I guess, if you will, their way of kind of practicing before the actual World Series. And at first I was like, oh, but you guys don't know how big of a deal the real World Series is. Like, that's a big deal. And don't get me wrong, it is, but genuinely the way that the SEC treated us and took care of us and really made that weekend feel like it was everything and then some, like that was just a really cool environment to be a part of. I definitely will take away just the care, the attention to detail, everything that they poured into that tournament was certainly something that will be incredibly memorable, just as a generic kind of SEC memory. I guess in a sense of South Carolina memory, we just always had a blast. I just the laughs, the pregame stories. I was just talking about earlier today how, Coach Crash would always tell the Audis like every pregame story of something motivational, something like this is how we're going to go out and play today, whatever it may be. And by the end of the season, I was like, Crash, what's the story of the day? Like she had to tell me, even though I'm not an outfielder, I never claimed to be one. But just like those little tidbits of memories will definitely I'll take with me wherever I go next.
How strange was it or unique that, what your college career ends at Durham, where you had one of the greatest moments of your career the year prior, where you were obviously with Stanford and won a super regional there. Like, was that weird when you found out you're going back to Durham there and you're playing in that regional in a postseason setting like you had just done a year earlier?
Right. Definitely weird. Definitely a small world. Definitely makes the softball world feel like, you've been around for ages when something like that happens. And granted, it was a span of, like you said, 2 years. Nothing but respect for that program, everything Coach Young has been able to do. And obviously for them to be at the World Series, like so deserving in such a short amount of time. So obviously had respect for that program from the beginning, and then to be able to play them. I probably felt like they had a little extra chip on their shoulder that it was me, which was, part of the game, part of the fun. But no, the great team, really great hitters, great pitching staff. They just really had a full solid team all the way around. So it was definitely crazy to end your career there. But at the end of the day, can't change it, so won't change it, and
Well,
that's how
and
we feel.
they kind of gave you some credit afterward because they talked, obviously got to the World Series, and they said losing to Stanford, losing to your Stanford team was a growing experience for them. Like that chip, that was the motivation the following
Right.
year to kind of get to that next level. I remember
Yeah.
talking to them before the season, and it reminded me a lot about what you went through at Stanford because before you got to the World Series, you got past a regional, you won at Alabama, but lost in a super regional at home to Oregon State. So in an odd way, they kind of followed the similar kind of plot, blueprint that you did at Stanford.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you see that a lot too with, obviously you have the dynasties and the powerhouses that of schools that just expect to be at the World Series have consistently competed for national championships, but with kind of like newer programs or programs turning it around, like it really is a grind. And you only get to see so much of the picture of somebody getting back to the World Series or, whatever it looks like the year before and how things can change in the softball world. Obviously it's the goal to be able to cover it all and to be able to have all of those stories be talked about. But at the end of the day, you get on the World Series stage and that's what people see. But obviously it is a grind and you don't know the kind of the mental toll on these athletes of it is losing at home in a super like that's hard. It's really challenging and to really just use that as motivation to be able to get back to work and get to the next year and really just understand that everything's got to happen for a reason at some point, and if it can be in the good of yourself and in the good of the team to turn it around, I think that's something that's really cool and really good storytelling.
Now you're still working on your grad degree, right? At South Carolina. Kind of update us on the academic side because I remember we spoke a year ago. That was a big part of your move to South Carolina. It wasn't just the softball experience. That's one aspect of it, but there was an academic side of it. So give us an update on the academic side.
Yeah, so this past year I had the opportunity to complete the sports management classes in the MSIM program at South Carolina. Really just a great opportunity of networking and connections. The professors are so well integrated into the sports world. We have one of our head professors was the former vice president of the NBA. Another was the former president of the Carolina Panthers. Just like a very cool staff to get to know everybody on a deeper level. Really enjoyed kind of those connections and those relationships. So now heading into this next year, I still have to finish my MBA classes to be able to graduate with 2 years and two master's degrees. So really looking forward to kind of that side of things just after the year that I had that made kind of just everything so rewarding in the classroom for me.
For those that may not be aware, the audience there, what's your plan post softball?
Oh goodness.
Do you used to have one?
This
Because I know you were still you weren't sure when we spoke a year ago.
Right. We talked a little bit about the broadcasting route for
Yeah.
sure. Sticking around the game a little bit, seeing what opportunities kind of arise, playing for a little bit. For as long as I play, I'd want to do something on the other side, whether that be coaching, becoming an analyst, whatever it may be. Long term, if I step away from softball, I'm really locked in right now on just the idea of being able to travel for a job. I think that's really cool. I've got the opportunity to travel for a job with softball, if you will. So that's been something I've been really passionate about, just learning new cultures, meeting new people. Definitely something I'm really interested in, whatever that could look like. As a matter of an actual career, my dream job would be to be like a blogger for like new restaurants that come up. I think that would be really cool. Certainly the opposite from softball, but
Wow, a restaurant critic? Is that what you want to do?
yeah. But like, I don't that's like very niche if I'm talking about, the five-star restaurants in the world and stuff like that. But we'll see. I don't know how that even relates to softball or how I would even be able to get there, but that could be I think I would have to like learn how to be a chef first, make my own restaurant. This is
Do
just
that, or you just
completely
visit,
off topic
or
now.
it could be that, or you just visit a bunch of restaurants and then write a review. Like, hey, this was good.
Right.
I don't know. That you could do that on
I
the
do my
side
own
and still
thing.
be involved in softball.
Exactly, exactly. Now with the whole NIL world, like you never know what people can run into. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But that was the dream a long, long time ago. Now softball's kind of taken precedence, but
Listen, with the way conference realignment is going and all the traveling that's going on now that schools are going to have to make and
seriously.
teams are going to have to, they might need a food like review. Like, hey, if I'm in this town, where should I go? That might be you might
Right.
We may have run into some here for you.
No, they actually did that in the Pac-12. I don't remember the blog now what it's called. I wish I could shout them out. But it was like every Pac-12 town, like where you should go and eat if this is what you're looking for. This is like living like the locals, because obviously fan bases are only going to travel to such specific Pac-12 teams every year. And you can plan out your trip accordingly. That's cool. That's really awesome.
In fact, I'll put you on the test right now. Of all the SEC places you went this past year, who had the best food you'll remember? Best restaurant or food place you went to?
Best restaurant, food place. Wow.
This is the hard questions we get here. This is on the hot seat.
I'm not allowed to say like South Carolina anywhere in South Carolina. That'd be too easy.
I'll give you that could be your second answer as well. I'll give you the South Carolina answer, but then an other than South Carolina. So start if you want to start. If you want to start with South Carolina, since you've spent the most time there, you could start there.
Okay, starting with South Carolina, we have
It's the airport. If you're missing a pair of glasses,
sushi
come on back
place.
to TSA.
All you can eat sushi place.
Yes,
Once again, if you're missing a pair of
that's the
glasses,
one.
come on back to TSA
That's-
screen and check one plane.
It's called Red Sake. It's like 20 minutes away from university, but like that, if you're hungry, if it's an after practice thing, it's like, where are you going? Red Sake for sure. For sure. You never walk away, obviously, less than anything but stuffed. Wow, everywhere else though. And I had to have gone there this year. That changes the answer too.
Really?
So, well, I grew up in Missouri, and so whenever we would go to Missouri football games as a family, we'd go to Shakespeare's Pizza, but we didn't play at Mizzou this year. Mizzou came to us.
Shakespeare Pizza. What a okay.
Have you ever had it? Never heard
No,
of
but
it?
I've heard of it. That's why okay.
Okay. Yeah, pretty iconic. Certainly was around when my mom was at school, and then my brother was, and that's kind of like, if we're going to Columbia, Missouri, we're going to Shakespeare's. Now I can't even remember where we went. Oh, we went to College Station.
Yeah.
Nothing really stands out.
Oh, this is rough SEC.
I know.
How about when you went to?
Really,
Yeah, go ahead. Which one are you gonna say?
if I like looked at my phone, I probably have pictures of the best meals. But now I'm like, I don't. It's also hard when you're playing all the time and then
Sure.
you end a game at 9 p.m. What's going to be
Well, you were at
open?
Auburn. Where'd you eat
Not
at Auburn? Because you spent a lot of time there. You had the SEC tournament there.
We did.
Uh,
Oh, my parents and I went to a restaurant in downtown Auburn that was kind of like seafood. It might have been like a seafood steakhouse. It was really good. Now I'm obviously blanking on the name, but right on like downtown Auburn was like you. Oh, my cousin and my aunt came with us when we were in Ole Miss, and we went to another one that I don't know the name of, but it was in the downtown, and like you walked upstairs
Okay.
for kind of like an overlooking of old square. What's it called? The square?
yeah. I think you're right. I think that's what it is. I'm not
Something like
100%.
that.
Yeah.
But it was like Southern food, kind of like New Orleans style. That was
Well, that
really
was my
delicious
point.
too.
That was kind of what I was hoping. I figured you had to experience some of the Southern food.
Yes, got for sure some Southern food out of the deal. I mean, I'll eat anything, but definitely cool to experience. Like in South Carolina, I'm obviously blanking on everything now because you put me on the spot. But
Well, let me ask you this, because we ran into each other in Orlando because South Carolina played there in a UCF tournament. Where'd you eat, while you were in Orlando?
Eric, this is like
Wow.
a plus. I've thought that my memory's been getting bad. Now this is just
This is
confirming
rough.
this is not. How am I supposed to continue to play softball if I can't even remember?
Although you might have stayed at, no, you guys probably went to a restaurant where during the tournament schedule, because you played early in the days in a lot of that tournament. So you probably went somewhere near Orlando there. Wow. All right. Well, while you think about that, let me ask you this: the Olympics will be in 2028. Softball will be in the Olympics in 2028 in LA, which will be played in Oklahoma City. First of all, let me ask you, what was your reaction when you heard this? That the Olympics, are being in LA, but the softball portion will be in Oklahoma City.
I think mixed emotions. I think I was kind of excited for the LA experience for softball, just because obviously, and even through our program, we actually had a guest speaker come who's running the marketing of LA 28. She's like the president of the marketing. And she was kind of talking about what they need to do to be able to make all of this happen. And it was just really cool to kind of think about her behind the scenes work and what that's going to translate to, and then how softball is going to be able to be a part of it. And so just talking to my people of, different sports even, and obviously like Stanford has great representation of Olympic athletes always, at every international competition ever. And I think just thinking of LA being a central location, it's like, okay, obviously you think of LA and you think of the traffic and California in general, but you do think about like the population that will bring into not only LA, but the US of it being such a big deal. And so I think that was kind of an exciting place of like, oh, softball is going to be in the midst of all of this population and all of this kind of traveling, whatever it may be. So to think Oklahoma City is like, oh, that's kind of far away. But at the same time, I do think it is going to be really good for the sport. And that is where we play the highest level of softball right now and the most watched softball and everything that goes into that. So definitely a way to be able to enhance further kind of the softball complex down there and just see kind of what that can bring for the growth of the sport in the future. I think that's really exciting.
Does the Olympics, softball being in the Olympics, does that influence your decision as you move forward as how long you want to play? Because you've played on the U.S. national team. In fact, a year ago, I remember we spoke, you had just got back from the Japan All-Star Series. Does that influence your decision process, your thinking at all?
I guess a little bit. I think you'd be, in the pro softball world, you kind of have to think about it just because if you're not thinking about it as an individual, you're playing against people that are preparing for that. So it definitely comes up in conversation a bit. Like I said last year, like being able to play in Japan with USA on your chest, like that's a dream come true. That's every little girl's dream come true. I would like to hope that that's not the last time that I get to represent Team USA, whether that be in the Olympics or whether that be in a different way down the road here. We'll see what happens. Just looking forward to every opportunity. Definitely think like I haven't seen the best of myself as a softball player yet, which is exciting. And what that can look like in the future is absolutely in turn like what the opportunities look like, but also what I can kind of make it be myself. So we'll see what happens. And we're kind of playing it by ear by now, but definitely just cool to be able to think about representing your country and your country too. As much as traveling and getting to experience new places is great, it's also so cool to be able to, bring the gold back to your place while you're, on your turf.
Now, a year ago, we talked, you were like a high profile transfer. We talked about it. It was high profile. It was talked about a lot, where you would land. It was written about, and you spoke about the experience, and it was unique. Here we are as we talk a year later. There's another Stanford Cardinal that's decided to move on and transfer. That's made some headlines recently. I think you know her work very well. In NiJaree Canady making big time headlines, going to Texas Tech. What was your reaction when you heard the news that she was moving to Texas Tech there?
To be quite frank, we were driving to Chattanooga for our championship series for pro softball, and Taylor Pleasance was driving me, and I had just woke up from a nap, and I literally was like, hey, she was like, Nijaree's going to Texas Tech. I was like, what? Like my whole world was kind of shook. But no, initial reaction is I'm really happy for her. I'm really happy for just, what she stands for. I think is honestly like she's the most humble person you'll ever meet. And I think it's just a matter of, getting people to kind of support her. And that's the problem with the transfer portal at the end of the day is, you have no idea why a student athlete is going in there in the first place until you talk to them and you have conversations with them. You don't know what's going through their head or where they're at. So I wish that, a lot of people would give a little bit more grace in that regard. I've texted Nijaree a few times this summer, but not enough to be able to have direct conversations about anything of her situation. So definitely need to do that and give her a call here soon, but just happy for her and think that she wouldn't have made the move if it wasn't in her best interest or the best decision for her.
Were you surprised? I mean, she was pretty open in the article at ESPN about the process, and certainly a lot has been made about the NIL portion of it. But were you surprised, or were you not surprised? Because you know her probably most better than most. It seems like there's a big purpose she has in this, that it's beyond just softball, that she wanted to make an impact for future softball players from an investment standpoint financially.
I definitely think it is that. I think there is obviously growth with the sport, like as much as, obviously, Nijaree's player of the year, like she's the best softball player in the country right now. Like that is setting the bar for the next whoever it may be, who's going to be, you know, the player of the year in 5 years from now, what that looks like, whether it be whatever the NIL space is, monetarily, what their value is. I definitely think she is setting the scene and kind of paving the way for whatever the next generation of college softball is. And I think Nijaree, beyond anyone else, would understand too that obviously college softball is an impact, but what do you do beyond that with the sport, and how do you really grow it for the younger girls that maybe never do make it to the college level, but still want to watch and cheer and kind of support you. I think that's probably part of her decision too, of just growing the game at a greater scale than just college softball and just monetary value.
What advice would you give her when you talk to her about being in a new setting? Because you went through this. You went from Stanford to South Carolina. There's an adjustment period, different conference and everything like that. What advice would you give her having gone just through this past year?
I think a lot of it is just stay true to yourself. Obviously, again, you talk about the amount of money and stuff, and it really is at a certain point of business. And you just have to remind yourself that softball's fun. You have to remind yourself that you enjoy it. You want to be doing it. If you didn't love the game, there's a reason that you go through, you know, the 6 a.m. weights and the conditioning, etc. That I think that, you know, you just have to continue to remind yourself. And there is a certain level that softball just becomes more of a mental game than a physical point. And that's probably about in college softball. It's a lot more demanding. It's a lot more taxing. There is a business side of it, but I would just remind her to stay true to herself and be the competitive Nijaree that she is, but enjoy the heck out of it, because you do only have, but she got 2 more years left, and it does really just go by so fast. So if you fall out of love with the game or whatever, find a way to get back to your why and your reason. And I think she does a really good job of doing that.
You mentioned that you've exchanged text messages, but you didn't really talk about the process. Is that common? Like when you went through the process, did you want to hear what other players thought about it, or did you kind of want to like, hey, let me just let me focus on this. I'll talk to other people, and if I have a question, I might ask. But I don't really want people to reach out to me. What is that like? Do you want the feedback? Do you not? And did you think of that as you were talking? It was like, I'm not going to ask her about this because I've been in those shoes, and there's probably a lot going through her mind.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it right there. Like, I personally had a really tough time through the portal. I think I probably touched on it a little bit last time we talked, just in being in, first I was in South Africa, and then I was in Japan. Now I'm operating with different time zones, trying to call these coaches, trying to maintain relationships that I've built over my last 4 years at Stanford. Like, it was just a lot to handle. And I don't think anybody really ever took the time, not anybody ever, but it was just hard to remember that, you know, people are still there for me. People are still supporting me without that kind of constant reassurance. So that's kind of how I reached out to Nijaree, just like, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need me. I did obviously go through the process a little bit different, but similar to a certain extent. So I think that was kind of just my bigger purpose of like, I could ask her why she's in the portal, and I can ask all of these questions, but at the end of the day, like, I didn't feel like people really were there for me in a certain way that I would have preferred. So just understanding that, you know, everybody is in the portal for a different reason, and you can't know until you ask them, but at the same time, like, respecting them, respecting their space, and just being able to say like, hey, if you want to talk, I'm happy to talk. But also recognizing that, you know, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Don't get me wrong. Some people have great experiences in the portal and they love it. And, you know, the attention or whatever it may be was exactly what they were looking for. But at the same time, like, that was not my experience, and that was not something I was willing to kind of put on her, or anybody else for that matter, in regards to just people being able to have the opportunity to transfer and find their happy place as they should, but still being able to know that, you know, it can be misused as well. And some people that haven't kind of experienced it don't really know kind of the behind the scenes of that. Which is definitely a something that will need to be talked about more in the future. I really do think. Something that I probably will have to talk about more in the future, but definitely a step in where sports are heading.
No, that's great. I love the fact you're open about that. What if I put you in charge? What would you tweak, if anything, about the system that we have in the transfer portal? You mentioned some of the challenges that comes with that. What would you want it changed to make it a better experience, or anything in general?
I think, it's interesting. It's the same idea as, like, you want to put regulations on it, but you don't want to be over controlling. So I think the whole concept and experiencing this past year at South Carolina too, with the coaching staff change of, oh, if you go into the transfer portal, your scholarship gets pulled, or they have the power to pull the scholarship. I feel like something along those lines doesn't sit right with me. I don't know if there needs to be like a stipulation piece to that, or like if you go into the portal for this reason, like they are not allowed to kind of pull your scholarship. At the end of the day, obviously it's a coach decision. But I think that kind of makes it feel a little bit more sketchy to me. Like, oh, if you're not staying here, then XYZ has to happen. I don't think that that is kind of giving the student athlete the freedom to choose where is really going to be best for them. I think there is a piece of going into the portal and just seeing there's options out there versus obviously the behind the scenes of if you're not in the portal and you're communicating with these coaches, like that's legal. So wouldn't you rather than play it, say, be in the portal to then see what's out there? I don't think there's any harm in that. Again, that's my personal experience, and someone else could speak completely differently on that. But that's kind of the one thing that I'm kind of like that this past summer hasn't really sat well with me. Not even talking about my own experience, but just in what I've known of things that have gone on.
Sounds like you've reflected a lot on that experience.
I try to.
Okay, that's good though. I think that's good because then others can learn from that. And I think I think we kind of forget that. We get caught up in every move and everything like that, and don't think, hey, maybe we could adapt and maybe how do we make this better instead of complaining about it, because it's always interesting. So much focus was on what she's going to make at Texas Tech, and yet nobody focuses on the quarterback in college football, because you probably know by as well talking to other athletes that football, this has been going on in football and the other sports. This is not just a softball thing, and now it just so happened that she's the one that broke the glass, if you will.
Right. Exactly. And like, I mean, the truth is, who knows what softball is going to look like next year, and who knows what it's going to look like in 5 years. And you just hope that it can grow the game a little bit, and you hope that softball becomes as big of a deal as these other sports that we mentioned. But you just never know how the world's going to work out.
I do now remember a year ago you said this is what's now giving, because you were thinking about going into administration, and now you're like paused because of where it's going. No, is that gone now? Completely now? You're done.
It's not completely gone, Eric. It's just like, holy cow, with how much has just happened in this last year. It's like, that is, college athletics is a special place, and I stand by that. I loved my undergrad time. I loved my grad year. Like, it is just a special place to be able to pursue an academic, whatever you want your education to look like, to pursue that. And then to also be able to play like for a cool university, that's just, they're second to none. But to then be someone responsible for everybody, I don't know if I can give myself that power yet.
I don't know if you want that. That's a lot of stress there. I mean, what do you want people to know about Nijaree that from having spent time with her as a teammate, that people may not, because obviously there's gonna be a lot of talk about it for the time being. But I've gotten word from people that know her that what a great teammate she is, and that she'll do whatever for your teammates, and it's very down to earth. You know from experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of those things ring true. I guess what I would want people to know about her is how fun she is. I don't think people see that because they just kind of see the competitive side of her. She's so fun. She's so willing to learn. I think there's just a lot more that goes into even her as like a face of college softball right now. Like, just take the time to, see her in a different light, especially right now. And I think that that's something that people probably stray away from when, they have the opinions of their own. But I would hope that she's probably off of social media right now and not really relishing in all those comments, and more just taking the time for herself and to enjoy her process.
How strange is it that when people now bring up Stanford to you, they bring them up as an ACC member, conference member? You're an ACC alum. That's
crazy. I saw our football team was at like a ACC media day, and I had to do a double take for a second. That's going to be quite literally a whole different ballgame. We'll see how it all shapes out, but nothing but luck to all of my athletes traveling across the country. And
I guess you'll be closer to them. Thing. You'll be closer to them, right?
Yeah.
In a weird way, you're going to be actually close. Right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know the schedules, and we don't know what the softball schedule will look like, but there could be a theory where you might see Stanford softball nearby in your backyard somewhere in the state of Carolina.
That's funny. I'll have to make a little road trip. I know one of my best friends, alums from Stanford, she's in the Boston area right now. And she was like, well, what if they come to the Boston area? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll come visit you and we'll have to make a thing out of it. But it is crazy. It is crazy to think about for sure.
That's kind of wild. You mentioned the coaching change at South Carolina. Ashley Chastain,
Mhm.
now alum at South Carolina, taking over there. Have you met her? What are you looking forward to getting to learn about her as a South Carolina grad student? It's going to be soon a South Carolina alum.
Yeah, I think I just spoke with her on the phone. I think she really does like just have her head on straight with just being able to, go into a new program, but also make it a competitive program right away. She's brought in some great transfers already. Really excited to see kind of her philosophies take over the Gamecock culture and just see kind of what growth can come from that. I'm excited to be a part of it. I mentioned to her that I might be interested in coaching while I continue to kind of play, see where the professional softball scene takes me. And she just was like, absolutely, like, we'll, help you out and see what we can do. But, got to let us know if that's the right option for you and whatever down the line. So we'll see how it shapes out. Excited to watch and to see what can happen. And as an alum of two programs, it's really cool to, have part of a success in both of their success stories as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And unless they actually end up playing each other at some point, then that could be awkward.
Right. It could be really weird. We haven't seen the schedules yet, so we don't know.
All right, good. If not, maybe we can name it after you, like the Vawter Bowl or something. We could,
That'd be cool.
huh?
Okay, we can think of something cool. We can think of something good.
Yeah,
That's a good start for sure.
we'll figure out some. All right. Well, one last thing. You mentioned obviously the state of college athletics. I mean, that gets a whole different chapter. When you look at all this, what are the thing that's got you the most curious of what's the next shoe to drop? Like, what's going through your mind? Like, wow, wonder where this is going in particular as far as impacting softball.
I would say my biggest question mark right now is just being in the pro softball world. What can pro softball bring to the sport? It's a little bit frustrated when you start playing your home games and you're playing against, all Americans from everywhere and numbers that people shouldn't even have as college softball players, and they're all at the professional level. And, you can't even fill out a section of stands. So it's a little bit frustrating to get to what you would maybe call a more particular higher level, and to yet kind of that fan base starts diminishing. So right now, my biggest question is just how do we carry those fans over? What does that look like? Obviously, you have a lot of the Oklahoma Sooner girls going to the OKC Spark, and that's creating that fandom in that area, which is great. I think really great for their program, really great for just professional softball as a whole. But what does that look like for a lot of other different teams that are taking players from all over? And how do we get that to be more of the MLB style? It doesn't really matter. Obviously, you have big names going to big organizations, but where does that fan base come from? That's definitely my biggest curiosity right now. So if you have any suggestions, please send them my way.
I'll try if I think I'll let you know. I mean, I'm just right now worried. You're just going to take my job as doing a hosting podcast at this point. That's what you should be doing. Just bring this all out.
I did try. Did try. Did I tell you about that? I started a podcast in the fall and I just haven't gotten back to it.
Yeah, it's not easy, is it, to keep following up on it, right?
It's the time commitment for sure. I can talk all day long, but now I'm like editing and posting. I'm like, oh my goodness. Not on top of being a student athlete.
Well, this is why Victor is my co-host, because he gets to edit all this stuff and produce it. That's the beauty of it.
Thank you, Victor.
We got a staff. Yeah, Victor's the MVP, unsung hero there. But hey, the beauty is you've got an open invite here anytime. So you can co-host here anytime you want.
Thank you. Amazing.
But I know you're going to have a busy time coming up. One more time, promote the camp that's coming up here that you're going to be involved in, which is, I think, I want to make sure people know.
Yeah, Monica Abbott Speed Retreat in Kansas City, operating August 2nd through 4th. So sign on up and we'll give you a ticket and be on your way. Gosh, next weekend.
That'll be coming up. Alana Vawter joining us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. Thanks for taking the time. As you can hear, the airport's probably calling her name. Hey, next time we get you on, though, no excuse. I want some food recommendations. I want big reviews.
Absolutely. I'll think of
a whole podcast.
Of all food, all SEC food. Oh, yeah. I can do Pac-12 too.
We can do Pac-12. We'll do them all. Food. We'll do throughout your career, like top 5, top 10 food places.
I love it. Sounds great to me. I'll start my list.
Beautiful. All right, buddy. Be safe, all right, and the travels, and we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Yep. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.